LeBron James walked into All-Star Weekend Media Day looking calm, composed, and ready to handle the usual routine questions that come with these events. Everyone knew what to expect. The cameras were set up, the reporters had their notebooks ready, the bright lights were shining, and the questions started rolling in exactly as predicted. Is this your last All-Star game? How much longer are you planning to play? What's the future hold for you? These are the same questions LeBron has been answering for years now, and he handled them the way he always does. He said he's taking it day by day, enjoying the moment, not rushing into any decisions, just living his life and appreciating where he is. Smooth, polished, media-trained responses that didn't give anyone a real headline. Nothing shocking came out of those exchanges. Everyone watching already knew that tone and approach because we've seen it 100 times before. But then, right at the end of the interview session, something shifted. The energy in the room changed. LeBron was asked a question about Israel. Now, this isn't just some random political topic that occasionally pops up in conversation. This is a situation that has been all over the news for over a year because of the serious conflict happening in Gaza. It's a heavy, emotional, global issue that millions of people feel very deeply about. And even though LeBron doesn't usually dive into world politics publicly, the question was asked directly to him. A reporter specifically asked him to weigh in regarding the Israeli player who plays for the Portland Trail Blazers and to share his broader thoughts on the situation. That's when things got tense and complicated. LeBron gave a response that, depending on who you ask, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Fans online reacted quickly. Some were confused by what he said, others were frustrated, and some felt he shouldn't have answered the question at all or should have declined to comment. The reactions came in waves across social media. Now, we didn't immediately break down LeBron's comments when they first came out because, let's be completely honest, LeBron isn't known for consistently speaking on global conflicts or international political situations. He usually stays focused on basketball, his business ventures, and issues within the NBA and the United States. That's just his established pattern over the years. But there's another NBA star who absolutely does not shy away from global conversations and deeper issues. That person is Kyrie Irving. Kyrie has always positioned himself as someone who studies world events, who travels internationally, who reads and thinks about social matters beyond just basketball. He's been vocal when he feels something needs attention, and that's become a significant part of his public identity. So when a video surfaced of Kyrie being recorded during All-Star Weekend, people immediately leaned in and paid close attention. In that clip, Kyrie appeared to take a subtle but pointed shot, not just at LeBron specifically, but at the entire media setup and the way these events are conducted. He questioned the types of questions that players are asked during media sessions. He basically said that the media conversations at these events are superficial and surface level. He wondered out loud why players aren't asked more substantive questions about real-world issues instead of the same.
That comment hit very differently than the usual All-Star Weekend soundbites. Let's listen to exactly what Kyrie Irving had to say, because his words add a whole new layer to this entire situation. Kyrie said that some of the questions they were asking during All-Star Weekend were just terrible. He emphasized that this is real life, and he wakes up every day feeling purposely driven to be a principled man, a moral man, a fact-based man. But when he plays his sport, he wants to have fun and compete at the highest level. He pointed out that the media doesn't ask real questions during All-Star Weekend. No real questions happen at all, and anytime somebody does ask what could be considered a real question, it's actually just a setup for a brand promotion or some other commercial angle. He said that people know exactly what real questions he's talking about, and he doesn't have to spell it out in detail because everyone understands what he means. He went on to say that the media ask the same questions over and over, and they get the same scripted responses. He believes that basketball fans, and really people in general, want to know more than just surface-level information about players. In order for that to happen, players need to open up the door and be more honest. He called out former players and current players for not being real and for capping, which is slang for lying or being fake. He stressed that everyone needs to be on one accord. He pointed out that basketball is a universal language and people are arguing about players who don't even play anymore. He said there's a time and place for those discussions, but the real questions never get asked. He even challenged his followers to send him questions they actually want to hear so he could potentially ask them himself during All-Star Weekend interviews. He made it clear that he gets thrown into political discussions all the time because he cares about humanity. And he finished by saying that basketball might save your life, but it won't save you from politics, because politics affects everyone. Now that you've heard what Kyrie had to say, the tone, the timing, and the delivery all felt very intentional. A lot of people online instantly interpreted that as a shot directed at LeBron James. Why did they think that? Because LeBron's answer to the Israel question earlier came across to many people as watered down, vague, and maybe even uninformed. That's what critics were saying. They felt like when the media member asked him that serious question about a real global issue, his response lacked depth and substance. And once Kyrie spoke up about the media asking superficial questions and players giving superficial answers, the internet connected the dots very quickly. People started saying that Kyrie was subtly calling out LeBron without directly naming him. Before we jump to conclusions or make assumptions, we need to hear exactly what LeBron James actually said in response to that question about Israel. Not the reactions to it, not the tweets summarizing it, not the clipped captions, but his actual words. That's what truly matters here. So let's play LeBron's full response. It's about 30 to 40 seconds long, and after we hear it, we'll break it down piece by piece. Listen closely to the tone he uses, the phrasing he chooses, and also pay attention to what
The reporter asked LeBron what message he would like to send to Israeli fans and what he thinks about the Israeli player Deni Avdija, who plays for the Portland Trail Blazers. LeBron responded by saying he's already been quoted on Deni Avdija before. When he was asked about him earlier in the season, he said he believed Deni was an all-star level player, and now he actually is an all-star, playing exceptional basketball. Then LeBron addressed the question about Israeli fans. He said that if he has fans over there, he's never actually been to Israel before, but if he does have fans there, he hopes they've been following his career and that he inspires people not only to be great in sports, but to be better in general in life. He said that hopefully someday he can visit Israel because he's never been there, but he's heard nothing but great things about the country. And he finished by saying he appreciates the question. All right, now that you've heard LeBron's actual answer word for word, what do I think about it? Honestly, I think some of the outrage and criticism feels misplaced and maybe even unfair. Let me explain why. When has LeBron James ever positioned himself as a global political analyst or an expert on international conflicts? When has he consistently led conversations about geopolitical situations happening around the world? The honest answer is that he really hasn't. That's not been his brand or his focus. Yes, he speaks on certain social issues, particularly those affecting black communities in America. He's been vocal about police brutality, voting rights, and educational inequality. Those are issues he's clearly passionate about. But when it comes to deep, complex geopolitical matters involving foreign countries and international relations, that has never really been his lane. Some critics have even questioned over the years how deeply LeBron engages with topics outside of basketball and his immediate interests. Remember when people debated whether he had actually read certain books that he mentioned in interviews? Or when he named The Godfather as his favorite movie, and people joked that he probably couldn't quote a single line from it? Fair or not, that reputation follows him. So expecting a detailed, nuanced breakdown of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from LeBron James might be asking for something he's never claimed to provide in the first place. And let's be completely real for a second here. I personally don't turn to NBA players when I want informed analysis on global conflicts and international politics. That's just not what they're trained for. These are elite athletes who have dedicated their entire lives to becoming the best basketball players in the world. They train their bodies, they study film, they compete at the highest level. They build business brands. That's what they do. That doesn't mean they can't speak on other issues if they want to, but it does mean that our expectations should match reality. We can't expect every professional athlete to be a scholar, a diplomat, a historian, and a political analyst all at the same time. That's simply unrealistic. Now, Kyrie Irving is different in this regard.
Kyrie has consistently shown curiosity about the world beyond basketball. He's spoken on various controversial topics over the years, he's traveled internationally, he's questioned mainstream narratives. He's positioned himself as someone who wants to dig deeper into issues and not just accept surface-level explanations. That's part of his identity and brand. But that path hasn't been smooth or easy for him. Remember the massive controversy during his time with the Brooklyn Nets when he shared a documentary that many people found deeply offensive? That situation exploded into an absolutely massive storm. There were calls for him to be suspended, sponsors dropped him, the media scrutiny was intense and relentless. It showed just how complicated and dangerous it can get when athletes step into global conversations, especially ones involving religion, race, and historical trauma. So when Kyrie questions the media for asking surface-level questions and criticizes players for giving surface-level answers, maybe he's speaking from his own personal perspective and experience. But if he's expecting LeBron James to suddenly transform into a global affairs expert who can speak fluently about every international conflict, that might be an unrealistic expectation.
That might be asking too much from the wrong person. If I had to name another NBA player who I think is genuinely thoughtful and sharp when it comes to topics beyond basketball, I would say Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. I'll give you Jaylen Brown. He's demonstrated that he reads extensively, he studies history and social issues, he actually engages with complex topics in a substantive way. He's spoken intelligently about economic inequality, systemic racism, and global politics. But outside of Jaylen Brown, that list of NBA players who can speak credibly on deep global issues gets very short very fast. Most of these guys are professional basketball players, and that's their primary expertise. That's their craft. That's what they've dedicated their lives to mastering. They live in the gym, not in libraries, studying international relations or foreign policy. There was even a moment during All-Star Weekend with Naz Reid from the Minnesota Timberwolves where someone asked him to name countries in Africa, and he couldn't do it. He straight up admitted that he didn't know. And that's not even to make fun of him or put him down. It just proves the broader point. People expect these athletes to be scholars, diplomats, historians, and cultural analysts all in one package. That's simply not realistic. These guys specialize in basketball. That's why they're in the NBA in the first place, not teaching world history or political science courses at universities. So when the media throws complex global political questions at NBA players during press conferences, what exactly are we expecting to get back in response? Are we expecting a graduate-level breakdown of the situation? Are we expecting a balanced foreign policy analysis that takes into account decades of history? Let's be serious and honest. Most of the time, the answers are going to be surface level because international politics is not their field of expertise. And I think deep down, the media members asking these questions know that too. But the headlines and the clicks that come from controversial answers, that's a completely different story. That's what drives the decision to ask these questions in the first place. Now let's talk specifically about what LeBron actually said in his answer. He stated that he's only heard great things about Israel. That particular statement made a lot of people pause and react negatively, because in today's world, with everything that's being reported daily and debated constantly across social media, saying you've only heard positive things about any country involved in a major conflict sounds incredibly disconnected from reality. So what does that statement really mean? Either LeBron genuinely doesn't follow international news closely and truly has only heard positive things, or he was consciously trying to give a safe, neutral, non-controversial response to avoid stepping into a political firestorm. If I'm being completely honest, it felt much more like he was aiming for the politically safe route. But here's the problem. Even that approach didn't land smoothly or successfully. It didn't come across as carefully calculated. It came across as uninformed and out of touch. That's the word that kept coming up repeatedly in the criticism. Not evil, not malicious, not intentionally harmful, just uninformed. And in moments like that, where emotions around a topic are running very high, tone matters enormously, delivery matters, word choice matters. And LeBron's response, while probably intended to be safe and neutral, ended up sounding tone-deaf to many people. But again, I want to emphasize this point clearly.
I don't personally turn to LeBron James when I want serious, informed analysis on global conflicts. I don't turn to most NBA players for that kind of insight, period. That's not disrespect toward them. That's just having realistic perspective about what they are and what they're not. If you're genuinely looking for fair, balanced, deeply researched takes on international issues, there are professional journalists who cover foreign affairs. There are historians who specialize in regional conflicts. There are political analysts who have dedicated their entire careers to understanding these situations. Expecting a professional basketball player to deliver that level of analysis during an all-star weekend media session, that's setting yourself up for disappointment. And let's keep it completely real about something else that's important to understand. At the end of the day, people protect their own interests.
That's basic human nature, and it's especially true for people with massive brands and business empires like LeBron James. When Kyrie Irving had his major controversy during his time with the Brooklyn Nets, LeBron publicly commented that players have to be very careful and thoughtful about what they post on social media. Some people interpreted that statement as LeBron being measured and responsible, but others felt like he was distancing himself from Kyrie and essentially throwing him under the bus to protect his own image. Whether that interpretation is fair or not, it demonstrated that when real pressure and controversy arise, players think very carefully about their brands, their contracts, their endorsement deals, and their business partnerships. That's the business side of professional sports, and it influences how players respond to controversial topics. So when people call LeBron James a social activist and compare him to legendary figures like Muhammad Ali, that's an absolutely enormous comparison. That's heavyweight historical territory. Muhammad Ali sacrificed his career, his earning potential, and his freedom to stand up for his principles. He was willing to go to prison rather than compromise his beliefs. That's a standard that very few people in history have lived up to. If believing that LeBron operates on that level inspires you personally, that's fine. But the standards and expectations that come with being compared to Muhammad Ali are incredibly serious and demanding, and not everyone who gets labeled as an activist is moving with that same level of courage and sacrifice. Now, I do want to acknowledge that I understand Kyrie Irving's broader point about the media asking shallow, repetitive questions. He's essentially saying that if we're going to have conversations with athletes who are intelligent human beings with thoughts and perspectives, let's talk about real life and real issues, not just the same boring sports cliches over and over again. That's a completely fair criticism. The sports media does tend to ask the same predictable questions and get the same scripted answers in an endless loop. But at the same time, we have to be realistic about who we're asking these deeper questions to and what their actual areas of expertise are. These are elite professional athletes. They train for championships. They dedicate their lives to their sport. They build massive business brands. They compete at the absolute highest level in basketball. That's their world. That's what they know deeply and intimately. The disconnect happens when we expect them to also be experts on international relations, global politics, religious conflicts, economic systems, and historical grievances that go back decades or centuries. That's asking them to be something they're not. And when they inevitably give answers that sound uninformed or surface level, we get upset and criticize them for not being educated enough. But did we really expect them to have PhD-level knowledge on every global issue? That's not reasonable. If Kyrie Irving personally wants to study these issues and speak on them, that's his choice and his right. But expecting every player to do the same thing is unrealistic. Different players have different interests, different levels of curiosity about the world, and different comfort levels with speaking on controversial topics. There's also another layer to this that's worth discussing. When athletes do speak out on controversial global issues, they often face severe backlash regardless of what position they take. If they speak up, they get criticized for being uninformed or for using their platform irresponsibly. If they stay silent, they get criticized for not using their platform and not caring about important issues. It's genuinely a no-win situation in many cases. LeBron has experienced this repeatedly throughout his career.
When he spoke out about police brutality and racial injustice in America, he was told to shut up and dribble by certain media figures and politicians. But when he stays quiet on other issues, he gets criticized for being selective about what he cares about. That's an incredibly difficult position to navigate, especially when
He has ownership stakes in various companies. He has media production deals. He has investments all over the world. When you have that much at stake financially, every public statement you make gets filtered through the lens of how it might affect your business interests. That's not necessarily selling out or being fake. That's being strategic about protecting what you've built. But it does mean that we probably shouldn't expect the same level of unfiltered honesty and political courage that we might expect from someone who has less to lose. Kyrie Irving, on the other hand, has shown repeatedly that he's willing to sacrifice money and opportunities to stand by his principles and beliefs. He gave up tens of millions of dollars when he refused to get vaccinated during the COVID pandemic. He faced massive criticism and lost endorsement deals when he shared that controversial documentary. He's demonstrated that he values his principles over his bank account in certain situations. That's admirable in its own way, even if you disagree with his specific positions on certain issues. It shows authenticity and courage. But not every player is built that way or willing to make those same sacrifices, and that's okay too. Different people have different priorities and different levels of risk tolerance. The bigger question here is, what responsibility do athletes actually have to speak on global political issues? Is it a moral obligation that comes with having a massive platform, or is it optional based on their personal interests and expertise? I tend to lean toward it being optional. I don't think athletes have an obligation to be political commentators unless they genuinely want to be. Their primary job is to play basketball at the highest level and entertain fans. Everything beyond that is a personal choice. If LeBron James wants to focus primarily on basketball and his business ventures and only speak occasionally on social issues that directly affect him, that's his right. If Kyrie Irving wants to dive deep into global politics and controversial topics, that's his right too. Both approaches are valid. The problem comes when we hold all athletes to the same standard and expect them all to be activists and scholars, when that's simply not realistic. What I think is most important is authenticity and honesty. If you're going to speak on an issue, speak from genuine knowledge and conviction, not just because you feel pressured to say something. And if you don't know enough about a topic to speak intelligently on it, it's perfectly fine to say that you're not informed enough to comment, or that it's outside your area of expertise. There's no shame in admitting what you don't know. In fact, that's often more honest and respectable than giving a vague, uninformed answer just to avoid looking bad. LeBron could have easily said when asked about Israel that he doesn't follow international politics closely enough to give an informed opinion, and that he's focused on basketball and issues here at home. That would have been a perfectly acceptable answer. But instead, he gave an answer that made him sound disconnected and uninformed, which ended up being worse than saying nothing at all. At the end of the day, this entire situation highlights the impossible expectations we place on athletes in the modern world. We want them to be perfect role models. We want them to be politically informed. We want them to use their platforms for good. We want them to speak out on injustice. But we also criticize them harshly when they say the wrong thing, or when their opinions don't align perfectly with ours. It's a difficult balance to strike, and there's no clear right answer. What I do know is that expecting NBA players to be experts on every global political issue is unrealistic and unfair. They're basketball players first and foremost. Some of them are curious and informed about the world, and some of them aren't, and that's okay. We should appreciate the ones who do make the effort to educate themselves and speak thoughtfully on important issues, but we shouldn't demonize the ones who choose to stay in their lane and focus on what they do best, which is playing basketball. These are my honest thoughts on the situation between LeBron's comments and Kyrie's response. If you have a different perspective or a different take on this, I genuinely want to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Let's have a real, honest discussion about this, because these are important topics that deserve more than just surface-level hot takes. And if you found value in this breakdown and this perspective, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because there's a lot more content like this coming.